So you have worked in finance, entrepreneurial, and leadership, and then now coaching. So how do each chapter shape the way you see business today?
It's interesting. Yeah, I've been very fortunate to have some extraordinary experiences in very, very different types of industry or very different cultures. And the first of that was actually when I worked in global finance, straight out of university when I was 23 years old, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and I got a job at Goldman Sachs. And I worked on the trading floor for that business for 10 years. And I would say that there are many different things that I learned from that experience. I could write a book about each individual experience, but a couple of the key things was the quality of the people in that environment, intellect, motivation was second to none from what I've experienced otherwise. And the other thing is that on the trading floor, the fast pace of that environment was also incredibly important and critical for the way that people would be thinking and acting on their feet. And it's something that I took into business life much later as well. I think the final thing is just at that point in time, Goldman was the place where everyone wanted to work. It was the most professional, the best investment bank. This was in the mid-90s, the best investment bank in the world, and it was an incredible place. And the quality of the way that the organizer was, the quality of the organization as a whole was just incredible. So that professionalism and that organization, process-driven, and some of the policies were way ahead of their time. They were way ahead on diversity and various other things, for example. And it was that sort of professionalism, if you will, and that quality of living, working process experience in a giant corporate that in some ways I was fortunate enough to take over to my next escapade, which was in entrepreneurialism when I set up an environmental company in the UK. And that was completely at the other end of the spectrum. I literally started it on my living room table with an idea, and I started looking at it. I did a lot of work around it on my own, and then one or two people started to help me. And then in 2007, I actually incorporated the business. And I think by 4 months later, we had 150 employees. So the growth of that business was quite incredible. There were some parallels. The whole business, it was something of a running joke. We used to run the whole business on an Excel sheet, which had really come from the trading floor back in those days. But that was a totally different working environment. And I think that the nature of entrepreneurialism is there's no place to hide. So that for me, entrepreneurialism isn't even just about a way of working. It's about a way of life. It's a mindset difference, which is completely different and alternative to the way that most of us live our daily lives, whether it's working or in relationships. Usually we've got somewhere else to blame, so I'm not taking full responsibility. In my own business, you have no choice. And so I think that what I try to do is often merge those two different things, the professionalism of global corporations with entrepreneurial mindsets, to have that mixture of being able to be rapid and quick and be able to solve problems really quickly, be able to fail quickly, but at the same time have a level of professionalism of dealing with clients, having the external facade of the business being very professional and so on, and having processes which are also leverageable across all the different parts of the business. So those are my two, if you like, different working experiences. And then after the green business, I started to work in leadership and coaching transformation. I started to do a lot of work around happiness and well-being. I researched it a lot and then started to teach a program in London. I actually taught a happiness program in London. It was in 2010. So this was way before the trends in happiness and well-being and positivity. And all my friends thought I was completely bonkers, thought I was crazy, and what was I up to doing this happiness program? But I felt as though it was a really important thing. That obviously the statistics at that time were saying that the world had got wealthier and people were operating better in some success metric, but their mental well-being and their mental health was falling apart. Something that, of course, 10, 15 years later is very familiar now. It's a modern narrative. But back then, people thought I was completely bonkers. But nevertheless, I taught this program a few times, and then people started to ask me to go and teach parts of it or the whole thing in businesses. So I started to then teach corporates about well-being and happiness, and it was very early then, so it was still a little bit weird and wonderful. And then in the meantime, I moved out to Asia. And again, I started to really think about how we could, improve the workforces, improve what people were doing in their day-to-day lives, because all of the evidence said that when you've got happier workforces, when people are happy, whether it's at the leadership level or the T-boy level, then people are working, they're more productive and so on. So, that was one of the things I wanted to try and bring more actively into the workplace. And then I started working with leadership teams because people were quite senior and wanting to have that guidance. Lots of people with stress and burnout, obviously, and so on. And I was lucky again. I was working with lots of the biggest banks and organizations around the world, places like Morgan Stanley and Barclays and Goldman and the NHS in the UK and various other places, HSBC. And I was doing that both in Asia and back in Europe as well. So I was just very fortunate with a bunch of these different clients. So I was working at the same time with top level of corporates, but also some of the people I was working with still entrepreneurial, because that was the mixture that I quite enjoyed. And bring it into almost like cross-purposing, cross-seeing those different organizational and cultural styles, because I think that's the organization of the future, is where you have that, as I said before, professionalism and the entrepreneurial attitude to move forward.